justice for all.
Thank you. This meeting is being televised by Chelmsford Telemedia. Is anyone else present that plans to record? Great. Well, welcome. I'd like to just start the meeting by thanking the town meeting reps and all the citizens of Chelmsford for showing their continued support for the schools by overwhelmingly approving the school department budget for the upcoming school year last Monday. I know I speak for the rest of the committee when I say we'll continue to work with the administration to make sure that this money is spent wisely in the support of all of our students and staff. All right, so our first item is approval of our minutes from April 23rd.
I make a motion to approve the regular committee meeting minutes from April 23rd, 2019.
Okay, any seconds?
Second.
Okay. Anybody have any comments, corrections? Good. Okay, all in favor? Approving? Aye. That's it. One abstention. Okay. 4 ayes and 1 abstention. Okay. All right, next up are CHS student representatives.
Today, I'm excited to say that the Tammy nominations for Fiddler on the Roof came out, and Fiddler on the Roof was nominated for 14 of the possible awards. There's AP testing both this week and next week at the high school. Children's play will be taking place this Thursday at 7 and this Saturday at 2 o'clock and at 7 o'clock at the PAC. The CHS Alumni Scholarship Award Night is May 13th at 7, and the Senior Student Awards Night for the high school will be at the PAC at 7 on the 16th.
So our junior cotillion will be Saturday, May 18th. Our mock car crash will be May 23rd. Math MCAS will start on Tuesday the 24th and go through Friday. The last day of school for our seniors is on the 24th, and the Town of Chelmsford Award Night is Friday the 24th at 7.
Very good. So we weren't sure whether this was going to be your last meeting or not. So just in case, we did get you both a little gift.
Thank you so much.
Show our appreciation for all the hard work. So that one is for Claire. So thank you very much for all your hard work and coming to all these meetings. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
all right, any good news?
I have visual good news today. So that's why I wanted to check with the student reps. So at our CHS students, their artwork is being displayed at the Z Art Gallery in Lowell, Mass. If you have a chance to go by, here's some examples of what's up there at this point. And then at Byam, they're celebrating, the K through 4 students are celebrating, and they received their Pride tickets. So they ended up having a glow party in their music class. So we have a couple of examples of what that looks like. And, say again?
I think it's South Row.
Oh, they told me Byam.
No, it's the South Row.
Okay, it's at South Row, correction. I'll put that down for South Row. And I don't have a visual of this one, but the Parker 7th graders, they're trying to show their Parker pride. And they had planters that were made by the CHS shop, where they're now putting the plantings in, and they're putting it out in that beautiful courtyard just to keep that up and show some nice aesthetics. So the kids are working on that right now. And that's it for good. Oh, this is the most important. It's Teacher Appreciation Week.
Yes.
Please be sure that you send a little note to your teachers if you have not done so. Students, make sure that you're good to your teachers.
Yes.
Every day's teacher appreciation.
Every day is Teacher
Right.
Appreciation. And that's it for good news.
Okay, anybody else have any good news? All right, so
I do have one, sorry for a point of order. One thing these two students did not mention is that the Chelmsford High School yearbook was.
We come tucked in the mic. Who you are, we know.
One thing, Ben Cole, 82 Brick Hill Road, Chelmsford High School. These two students neglected to mention something very, very important that occurred. The 205-page yearbook was just published and sent. These are our two editors for the Chelmsford High School Lion.
That's great.
It was just an incredible job that they've done, and they've been very busy all year with it. We're all very proud of them.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
super.
all right, we're now to public input part of our meeting. If you would like to speak to the committee about any of the items on tonight's agenda, please come forward and state your name and address for the recording secretary.
Hi, my name is Tammy Gambale, and I live at 17 Waterford Place. Since the committee is the only group in charge of the safety of the school children, then it is in their jurisdiction to vote on the safety of the bus routes and stops. It is their duty as elected officials to provide a safe environment for the Chelmsford students. I am here today to ask the school committee to establish safety criteria for bus stops and to require that all bus stops meet those criteria without making exceptions for streamlining or convenience. The safety of my young children at their bus stop location has been ignored, and they have been forced to travel an unsafe distance to get to an unsafe bus stop, and this needs to be changed. For example, in many other districts, the school committee sets a maximum distance on how far a child can be required to walk to a bus stop by school level. Lots of districts say no more than 0.2 miles for elementary school children and no more than 0.5 for high school age children. Every district can make their own limits within the guidelines of their state, but the Chelmsford School Committee has not established any such rules. After at least 25 years of buses safely picking up children on Twist Road and Waterford Place, those roads were cut out of the bus route in August of 2018, and we were never given a reason why. As a result, all K through 4 grade students at my house are expected to walk a distance of 0.62 miles, which is well beyond what is documented as acceptable in other districts, over 3 times the common limit of 0.2 miles. These are very young and small children, often carrying heavy backpacks and in some cases large musical instruments. It is simply absurd forcing parents to drive their children to the bus stop or to school because the bus stop is too far or unsafe. Compounding the problem is the state of Twist Road. Along the road where the children need to walk, there is a blind curve and no sidewalk. Crumbling pavement causes cars to not stay in their lane. During the long Massachusetts winter, these roads are among the last in town to be plowed or treated, while snow and ice build up on the sides of the road, leaving even less space for people to walk. Also, Chelmsford DPW doesn't plow less than 3 inches of snow, and there isn't enough traffic on the roads for it to melt promptly. So now we're talking about 5 to 10-year-olds, kids that are expected to walk almost 2/3 of a mile in snow, ice, and slush. If the kids do make it to where the current bus stop is, at the Main Street end of Twist Road, there are still many more safety issues there. There are some bad things that happen on Twist Road that I don't want to mention on camera, but Mr. Newcomb can tell you about it later. There are numerous large pools of water, 4 to 5 feet across, and cars parking in the driving lane since there's no shoulder to park on, which blocks drivers from being able to see all of the kids waiting for the bus. There's a cemetery entrance on one corner and a fence on the other. There is no driveway or other area where the families can safely stand off the road while waiting for the bus. A group of currently 12-plus people are constantly moving this way and that in the middle of Twist Road to avoid cars that are moving in 6 different directions. The kids also have to cross the busy Main Street to get on the bus, and 3 people have almost gotten hit recently while at the bus stop. I wrote a petition and easily got around 100 signatures, and I was told that would be enough. Every single person that I asked was shocked at the unsafe conditions and distance that my young children have to walk to get to the bus stop now. Nobody said no to signing the petition, and numerous people stopped to ask me often why my bus stop problem has not been fixed yet. When Main Street is flooded with rain, which happens sometimes, the passing cars would drench us in rain, so we are forced to wait in the middle of Main Street for the bus to come, where cars are easily driving 40 miles per hour. There was even a creepy man that ran up to the kids and took their pictures before we were able to chase him away. All of these problems could easily be avoided by the bus operating on Twist Road and Waterford Place, as it always has in the past. While I understand that the school committee does not establish the bus routes, it is clear that the people who do are not placing a high enough priority on our children's safety or keeping the burden placed on parents at a reasonable level. So I ask you to establish parameters within which the bus routes must operate. In conclusion, please allow the bus to drive down Waterford Place for the safety of the children of Chelmsford, as that should be your #1 priority. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else would like to come forward?
Sorry. I Donna Omabono, 7 Crabapple Lane, Chelmsford, second grade teacher at Harrington. And on behalf of the CFT 3569, Thursday, May 16th, there is a rally scheduled at the State House from 1 to 7 p.m. It is a Red for Ed rally. Teachers, unions, and municipalities across the state will be attending, again, encouraging lawmakers to reevaluate and change Chapter 70 funding, which has been outdated for over 26 years. The CFT would like to create a joint letter with the school committee addressed to our 4 state reps, urging them to reevaluate the state funding procedures. Thursday, the 16th, also happens to be Chelmsford High School Senior Awards Night, as the girls mentioned. Therefore, many of the CFT reps from the high school will not be able to attend. It would be wonderful if anyone from the school committee could attend.
And Ben Cole, 82 Brickhill Road. It's also our, Dr. Lang has also volunteered to help put something together so we could get a bus leaving in the late afternoon and returning by 4:30 because there are also contract negotiations. I have 3 T-shirts in no particular order. I'd just like to give one to Donna Newcomb because she's been so important in the Chapter 70 funding, Dr. Lang, and as the school committee chair, Dennis King. And if you can't go, at least we can wear red for it on Thursday. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing.
Donnie had something?
No,
Thank you very much.
I was looking to see, I know there's some buses in Lowell going too. I didn't know
Yeah.
if we could coordinate our efforts.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I'll talk to
we
Jay.
had talked to Jay. That's awesome. Thank you.
Is it this Thursday or next Thursday?
No, it's next Thursday, the
Thursday, okay.
16th, yeah.
16th, okay.
Yeah.
And again, we just mentioned this to Dr. Lang earlier, and he automatically volunteered the bus, and
I'm
this would
like
be
that,
great.
Ben. Yeah, that happened. No,
Thank
but
you.
we'll chat a little bit more. We just had a brief conversation this afternoon about possibly sending a contingent to kind of support the initiative on that particular day. So more details will come. I'll certainly email the school committee if there were members that were interested in participating. You'd certainly be welcome. There's a bunch of competing interests that evening.
Yeah.
So we're thinking about just going in for the early part of the program and then being able to leave to get back here at a reasonable time. But I'll certainly follow up with you
Yeah,
tomorrow or
absolutely.
Thursday.
Janet's going to be sending something out on our behalf, okay?
Great.
So that we can coordinate.
And I'll make sure the school committee knows as well.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and at the very least, we can sign off on a letter to the reps.
Yeah, has there been kind of like standardized language in letters that have come from different
Sure.
districts, do we know?
It's 90% complete.
Okay,
We
all
should
right.
have it
Whenever
done
you do,
by-
let me
before
know, and
Friday.
I'll circulate that around the committee.
We may have
And,
something from last week too, in our packet from Day on the Hill.
Okay,
Yeah, those talking points that they give.
yeah, the talking points, yeah, okay.
We also have a scheduled meeting with Tom Golden on June 3rd at 3:30 and Tammy Govea on May 24th to follow up on this as well. Great.
Thanks, Donna.
The second thing I want to mention regards the AP exams, which are taking place right now. While Chelmsford High School doesn't offer all 39 courses, we have been designated as an AP capstone school. And this month, 299 students will be taking approximately 620 exams at the high school. Each year, thousands of college and high school educators apply to become readers. The dates for these readings occur June 3rd to 9th, June 11th to the 17th, or June 12th to the 18th. They take place in cities throughout the U.S. The ones applicable here are Salt Lake City, Cincinnati, and Kansas City. Recently, 3 Chelmsford teachers applied for and were selected to be AP readers. This should not just be seen as an incredibly rare and important distinction for said teachers. It serves as a great tool for improving content delivery for said AP classes. I just received a note from Trevor Parker, the Senior Vice President of AP and Instruction, that I'll be forwarding to the Assistant Superintendent. AP readers are reimbursed for travel and lodging to the AP reading sites. This amount is approximately, $1,639 to cover the transportation and the housing costs. The readers themselves meet for 7 days, including Saturday and Sunday. Reading the AP exams is very intensive. Each day, the grading begins at 8 a.m. and does not end until 5 p.m. In a survey conducted by the College Board, 97% of returning high school AP readers stated that they made changes to the way they teach or score work because of their experience at the AP reading, and the scores for their students also improved. Such an experience can only improve teachers' professional development and contribute to higher scores for AP students. Therefore, it's a bit as an educator, as an AP instructor, it's a little disappointing when the teachers can't go. There are viewpoints on both sides. One is it's a conflict of interest. The other is that teachers are taken away from the school. When the teachers applied for days off as professional development days, they were denied. One thing I'd like the administration to consider is that teachers and administrators take several days to assist in NEASC, the NEASC assessment of other schools. Such activities promote increased professionalism for the Chelmsford Public Schools. This activity would fall under that category. I realize that some people see it as a conflict of interest. I'm a teacher, so I don't. And if it can't be settled this year, it's just something I would like our administration to look to in the future. Again, the feedback for everyone that goes to the AP readings, it increases their content and delivery in their grading tenfold, which only results in higher AP scores. So we're just hoping that you can take another look at that in the future. Thank you. And again, congratulations to the wonderful young editors.
Okay, is there anybody else that would like to come forward? Okay. All right, moving on then to new business.
Thank you. Yes, we have our, actually, I'd like to invite a couple of guests. I put the CHIPS thing up first. Mr. Simonian, Mr. McSheehy, would you like to come on up? We have representatives from the Chelmsford High School Alumni Association to just share a few words with us about their upcoming event.
Very few. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Raining out. We got soaked. The Chelmsford High School Alumni Association is very pleased to announce its 21st annual awards night. It will be held on Monday night, the 13th of May, at 7:30 p.m. in the Carl Rondina Performing Arts Center at Chelmsford High School. The Alumni Association is also proud to announce that awards will be presented to worthy Chelmsford High School seniors and alumni. This year, the total monetary value of the awards will exceed $54,000. In fact, to date, the Alumni Association has presented, to include this year, 1,994 scholarships, or awards as we call them, totaling well over $880,000. But who's counting? To me, that's a lot of giving back, and we're proud to do it. We are very proud of our Chelmsford High School and of the scholars it produces. With me tonight, as you know, is Terry McSheehy. He will be doing the presentations that evening, and I assume that you've already got some invitations, and I hope that you're going to be there. It's just a great, great night. Any questions?
I've already RSVP'd.
Me
Yes.
too.
I will be there.
I know.
Follow directions.
Yes.
Right.
My wife is very pleased.
Yes.
And I might add
I
that
did too.
What?
Dr. Herschel was a great help this year.
Oh, I love awards. I love giving money.
Thank you very much
Yeah, thank you very
for
much.
all- everything you do for the
Thank you.
kids.
Thank you. Cool.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
You as well. Next up, we actually have Mr. Russell Hoyt. I'd like to invite him up. He is our coordinator for, good night, girls. Thank you. Don't forget your bags. Coordinator of our CHIPS program over at the Westland School, the ComEd School, and he's going to share with us some of the work that's taking place in CHIPS, our integrated preschool. So I don't want to take away too much of your thunder, but welcome you here this evening. And, oh, I've got to give you the clicker. And then you can start. If it gets a little temperamental, I'll move forward for you. Okay. But if you just hit the up arrow, it's just like.
Thank you for having me here this evening. I learned that some of the other schools actually usually bring some students and teachers with them, so next year my presentation will be much better because there'll be a teacher and there'll be students here. You won't just have to hear it from me. But what I wanted to do is just talk to you a little bit about the preschool curriculum itself. So an overview for tonight's presentation. Let's see, we're going to go to the next one, I guess. Here we go. One of the questions that I get a lot from people when they hear about curriculum in preschool is, don't kids just play all day? And you can see from the picture at the top, sometimes we do play. That is actually me under all that hair. That was crazy hair day.
That's great.
But what we do actually in play is the kids learn a ton of things that relate directly to the K through 12 standards. So I just wanted to share a little bit about that with you all tonight. In addition to the K to 12 standards, what we also have that's unique to both preschool and kindergarten are the social emotional learning standards and the approaches to play and learning. The standards are excellent. They've been out for about 3 years. I am a certified trainer in the state. We've started to work with the pre-K and the K staff here in Chelmsford on that. And there's also a committee working to set the standards for first, second, and third grade. So those standards are actually starting to work their way up all the way through 12th grade pretty soon. So the next slide. Oop, I'm going backwards now.
You go the other way.
All right. So in English language arts, one of the most important things that we need to do for young children actually is to read to them. And we do a lot of that in the preschool setting. We actually have a lot of parents that will call us and they'll say, you know, my child can read. Are they going to be able to be supported in your preschool? And what I'll say to them often is, it's great that they're starting to read on their own, but it's actually more important that you read to them and that our teachers read to them. It's the discussions that kids have around the things that they hear that actually help them become better readers and writers as they move forward through their education. So that's something that happens a lot at the preschool. And even when you talk about some of the specific standards, when you think about composition or writing itself, it's actually the idea generation that we're seeing a lot more research around. And so young children just providing works of art, drawing pictures, talking about what they're drawing, actually helps them become better writers as they move forward through the educational system. So that's a lot of the types of things that we work on. Math actually happens more often than our kids and teachers, I think, sometimes even realize. Even at just going to circle time and looking at the calendar is actually a math experience. The kids count the number of days in a week, so they're working on some of that rote counting. They'll also have jobs like the friend counter, where they actually have to get up and give a high five to each student as they count them, so they're starting to learn concepts like one-on-one correspondence. We also actually even do a lot of data collection. The kids will be the weather helper. They go out and look out the window and count how many days it's been sunny or rainy or cloudy this week, and they actually start charting it. So they're actually doing quite a bit of math that they don't even realize. They're just enjoying the experience that they're having. We also do a lot of work in science, technology, and engineering. The children get to make predictions about a lot of the things that happen within the preschool setting and then try those things. So they're using tools. You can see from one of the pictures there too, we even have kids working on experimenting with things like gravity and ramps and pulleys and using small machines. It's amazing how much actually happens when you break down what you see within a preschool day. We work on history and social science. We do that in a lot of different ways. We work on things like what are jobs like every day. We have kids that actually run make pretend pizza parlors, or they'll run a Dunkin' Donuts coffee shop within their classroom. They all know that I take mine with cream and 2 sugars now, because when I go in, they can give me my order before I even ask for it. But we work on a lot of those types of things. We have visitors from the firefighters and the police department so that kids start to learn who those community helpers are. And we start to talk talk about personal responsibility and fairness. Now, you'll notice in the corner, too, the SEL and APL, so the social emotional learning and approaches to play and learning really comes up again in this area where kids start to learn what are the rules of being in school, how do you sit next to your friend, keep your hands to yourself, some of the things that become really important for kids once they get into the higher level educational environment. And then health education, also a strong connection to the social emotional learning. We talk about things like safety for self and others. You can see a lot of the other schools I know are doing the PBIS, the positive behavioral intervention strategies. We actually have a model of that we're going to be introducing next year called the pyramid model. It's not just PBIS that's sort of watered down for preschool. It's actually a PBIS model that's been written for preschool students. It's something that I've had quite a bit of experience with. The University of Connecticut is actually training a lot of trainers, and we have connections with a couple people who are going to come in and do some consultation with us, so that we'll be introducing a lot of those practices as to how do you behave well, how do you teach behavior just the same way you teach math, break it down as a concept and teach skills that kids can practice every day. Also, things like brushing their teeth, being good, physically healthy. We do have kids going to physical education classes with a physical education teacher right there in our building, and Mr. Mike is one of the most famous people in the building. Even though I go by Mr. Russ, I get called Mr. Mike more often than I get called Mr. Russ, and I'm okay with that. So there's a lot of enjoyable things happening. We also have a great experience for our student with the arts. We do have music. We do have art projects that happen every day in class throughout. When kids are even working on things like cutting and counting, they're actually doing that to put together project-based learning. And those come out in art projects that they end up getting to take home. We're actually playing with the concept next year of creating portfolios that the students would then be able to present to their parents at the end of the year to show their progress, and to show how at the beginning of the year when you ask someone if you could draw a picture of a person, it might just be a circle and a dot, and by the end of the year it actually has a body, it has arms, it has all of the facial features to it. So it's just exciting to see how much growth the kids can have within a school year. And then I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate being able to talk about our curriculum with you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Anybody have any questions?
I just
No,
have a
thank you.
comment. Do you have a question?
No, just thank you very much. That was really good. Great.
John?
Yeah, so I want to say my daughter went through CHIPS. My son ended up in Lions Pride this year, just the way it worked out. But generally speaking, there's kind of a narrative around pre-K that it's babysitting and playing. And I mean, the incredible progress both my kids made going through pre-K, and just even more recently my son with his interaction with children. He had trouble with confrontation. He had trouble breaking into a group to play. He's almost at a reading level now. And I saw both my kids go through pre-K, and I know the CHIPS program is great. And I just appreciate the work. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Anybody else?
Just want to make a comment about, I know how much the parents have also participated in CHIPS, and the cooperation with the PTO has been amazing there. I've seen it over the years, so I just want to congratulate you on that, because especially at this level, the parental involvement is so appreciated when there's that collaboration. And I think this is amazing. I had a chance to go into the school a few weeks ago, and it's just alive and thriving, so it's wonderful to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And are the kids excited to get the new playground? Or?
Oh, yes, on Monday I walked in, I said, did anybody notice anything different? Because on Friday it was there.
Oh, really?
And when they walked in on Monday morning, it was gone. So they all said, and it's funny, none of them, like, a lot of the comments weren't, that the playground's gone or destroyed. It was, we're getting a new playground. Like, when I asked them what happened, that was their answer. Their answer was, we're getting a new playground. So they are absolutely very pumped for it.
That's great.
Great.
Okay.
Good. No, thank you very much. As you know, we have all the different schools and programs come, but consistently across the district, just want to give a little praise to you and your staff at the school. Just consistent, I think, pleasure towards the CHIPS program and the staff and the students and the experiences that the kids have at the school. It's right across the board. I think people are just very happy with the programming. I think you do a great job over there. So thank you, and please send that thanks back to the staff as well.
I will. Teacher Appreciation Week, they'll be glad to hear it.
That's right.
Aren't they getting
you
a
very
new
much.
AC this year?
Have a good evening.
That's on the upstairs
Yeah.
of the Westland, primarily for like the summer programming.
Gotcha.
So they wouldn't necessarily be there in the summer to benefit from it, but yes, that's happening at the same time. The playground is the big thing everyone's kind
Yeah.
of waiting for over there. Thank you.
Stop.
Just gotta shut this off. Okay. All right, third item on the agenda this evening is our fiscal 2019. Thank you for coming, Amy and Russ. Budget projection. So I'm actually going to turn this over to Joanna and ask her to walk us through our current budget. So fiscal 19 is the year that's going to end June 30th. So this is the year that we're currently in. At the last school committee meeting, you had received the regular quarterly report that went right through the end of March. Joanna has now taken all of our accounts and kind of projected a spend out through the end of June 30th, and she's going to walk you through that at this point.
Thank you. In your packet, you have a narrative, and then there's a one-page chart of the budget by DESI function code. It's also near the beginning of the budget books, and we'll be referring to that, showing the $59 million budget and how we think we're going to spend in each of the categories. And then the last chart is diving a little bit deeper into the special ed out-of-district tuitions, since that's such a big component of the local budget. So the narrative talks about how we're favorable in many categories that we've been talking about all year. And we are forecasting that we're going to come in these categories under budget by $734,800 when it's all added up. And then we will be presenting to you at the next school committee meeting some recommendations for one-time purchases due to some of these savings, and then a large portion of it going to fund special education out-of-district tuitions so that we do not have to do the offsets to, as large of an offset to circuit breaker and no offset to school choice. So we've been talking about the favorable labor variances all year. Not going to repeat too much. I think you're very familiar with people coming in at Bachelor Step 1, where we budgeted Master Step 3, and so forth. We're also favorable in labor because sometimes we have people who are on an approved unpaid leave of absence, so that results in some savings. And then lastly, the time lag in filling a vacancy. So because of those favorable variances, we're also not going to need the offset to the CHIPS revolving fund that was budgeted, the $115,000, and we're not going to need the offset to the school choice fund, as I just mentioned, for special ed tuitions, nor the transportation revolving fund. We had talked about that with the school safety. And that'll be reflected in when we get to the chart. The next page is non-labor variances. And we're also going to be favorable in these areas. Some of the larger ones, our copiers, our per page counts, employee accommodations, there have been less requests. Our external costs for professional development have been less. Our general supplies and textbooks have been less than budgeted, and our special education contracted services are coming in under. And I just wanted to point out about general supplies and textbooks. While the schools are all getting what they need, when you add up all these very small favorable variances, in the end it amounts to, perhaps like $10,000 overall across the district. Some unfavorable non-labor variances, there are 3 areas, and I want to bring those up because after this agenda item, there's a budget transfer agenda item, and we're requesting that some of these favorable variances then help offset these 3 areas where we're going over slightly. One area we're projecting is our special education transportation, and that's driven by the number of students who have specialized transportation noted in their IEPs. We're anticipating that category to be over by $22,000. Utilities overall, we're estimating that to be over by $29,000. That's still not sure how that's going to end exactly because we're still getting the bills for the end of the winter and less solar credits because of the winter. So that may actually come down. So we'll keep watching that monthly. And then I just had one employee separation that was not budgeted. We had a professional support personnel employee retire mid-year, and that contract has a payout of $2,000 that was not budgeted in that category. So those are the three unfavorable non-labor variances we're projecting at this time. The next section is special education out-of-district tuitions, and you've seen this chart many times. So what we're trying to say is we will not need the offset to school choice of the $250,000. The Valley credit in the budget book, we had earmarked $200,912 of that credit, and we're recommending all of it go straight towards special ed tuitions, and that number, as we've been reporting all year, is $549,502. And then, again, a portion of this overall favorable variance of $734,800. And we'll have that number more defined for you at the next meeting as we look through the recommendations for one-time purchases. It's probably best to take a look at the chart of numbers, the first chart of numbers, which has all the categories down the left, and then the budget of $59 million in the different categories. And then there's a column that says the adjustments, and that's our estimate per category of what's going to be over and under. So as I talked about the copiers coming in under, that's that first, I think $20,000. And then there's some smaller ones. We talked about less employee accommodations. That's under the human resources line, under by $25,000. When you get midway down, classroom teachers, we've been talking about that all year. That's the being under by $396,000. And then when you go down further, we talked about on the narrative, the transportation, that's the increase of $22,000. And in the end, when you add all of those up, that's the net of the $734,800. The last page is special ed tuitions. Tried to lay this out simple as possible. The first column is right out of the budget book, saying that overall our special ed out-of-district tuitions are $7,450,000. That was our budget, cash out the door, paid to the people at these schools out of district. And then in the budget, we had a $2.8 million offset to circuit breaker, a $250,000 offset to school choice, a Valley credit offset of $200,912. And then, so in the local budget, we had this $4.199 million. Since that time, you approved 3 budget transfers totaling $81,100 for 3 areas. It's written about the Parker panels, the truck, and the school safety
The school
software.
safety software.
So those were approved in the fall.
So in this line, on all the budget reports that you've been looking at these quarters and the monthly ones on the website, the special ed tuitions funded from the local budget is 4.117988. What we're saying is if, the line under that, if we were to take the whole $734,800 savings straight to special ed tuitions and not do any one-time purchases, if we were just to take all of it, we would be funding from the local budget $4.8,052,788. That's what that first column is trying to show. So if you go over to a couple columns over and the same highlighted 4.8 million, what that will mean is, to date, we thought we'd have 7.45 million of special ed tuitions. I'm talking to Amy Reese and looking at all the open purchase orders and everything, and the actual amount of tuitions, it's a little less. It's 7.3 million. And if we take, I'm going to skip that one line. I'm going to go down. Well, I'll just go through. If we're going to land at the 4.852 million, that would mean our circuit breaker offset isn't going to be 2.8 million. It would only be the 1.9 million. If we take the whole Valley credit of 549,000, that gets us to 4.8 million funded from the local budget for special ed tuitions. That would leave the circuit breaker balance a little greater than what we had been reporting, because again, we don't need to take as big of an offset because we have these other favorable variances. This is the high end. It will not be this high because we're going to bring to you recommended one-time purchases for this 734,000, but it will be a large portion of the 734,000. I'm going to stop there. There's a lot to digest, and see if there's any questions or see if Dr. Lang wants to add anything.
John?
Yeah, so just a quick question. Do you, have you put thought into what the one-time purchases are going to be? Do you have kind of an idea?
Yeah, we've been working closely with the schools around some recommendations. We always take a look also at things that we already plan on purchasing, like July 1 with funding, to see if we might be able to just accelerate that purchase and do it now. That would then just free up money next year
Later,
to
right.
be, more thoughtfully allocated throughout the budget. So we do have a number of different ideas. I think the couple of the big takeaways, just to translate some of the higher level numbers here, is we're basically trying to back into an amount that, to show you graphically, if we actually just allocated this whole balance to the circuit breaker fund, or basically had to transfer less circuit breaker funding into the operating budget to be able to carry over more circuit breaker in the end of the year, what would that actually be? So if we actually didn't make any one-time spending, and we wanted to, like we have in previous years, how we try to build up the circuit breaker fund. If we just put all the money to circuit breaker, technically at this point, our balance would be a little over $3 million at the end of the year. So we've talked about, legally, you can actually carry over 1 year's allocation. So it'd be pretty close to that amount of money. We don't want to cut it quite that close. I also think, we previously had been talking about trying to put aside $1.5 million, $2 million in circuit breaker. So again, not that you don't want to have a big reserve, but I don't think we really need to be creeping up to the $3 million mark. I think at this point, if our circuit breaker reserve at the end of the year was closer to $2.5 million, that would certainly be well within the range of what we were talking about, even probably a little bit more. That also then gives us a cushion if our circuit breaker, let's say, came in at 2.8, 2.9 million. Again, I don't want to be riding right to that amount. So we're going to be coming back looking at the circuit breaker balance. Again, we had to kind of back into that number, being closer to the $2.5 million range. So I think my takeaways, if I were you at this point, would be, overall the budget's in very good shape in fiscal 19. We obviously have some surpluses that we've been projecting throughout the course of the year. Largely, $500,000 of that is salaries that, weren't expended for one reason or another. So it's not, totally out of the ballpark of where that money was coming from. But we want to be very thoughtful in the recommendations that we bring forward to you. We want to make sure that the one-time purchase recommendations that we bring forward are certainly supported by the schools, but also aren't going to have recurring costs that are going to carry into the next fiscal year. If we're going to make a one-time purchase, we really want it to be limited to fiscal 19. We don't want to incur some kind of expense that's going to carry into fiscal 20. That's really not a one-time expense. So it won't be like salaries or positions, things like that. It'll be more items within the budget that we've identified. And we'll get that list out to you in the recommendation prior to the meeting, so you'll have plenty of time to review it with the rationale around each of the purchases. But obviously, there will be, as Joanna had mentioned, a significant portion of that carryover that will be allocated to the special ed circuit breaker fund, so that we're carrying a healthy balance. I think another reason, even outside of the local budget, that we're going to be able to put some money aside also in circuit breaker this year, is that our value credit did come in as high as it did. And, we had only budgeted the approximately $200,000. I could look for the real number, but 200, and it came in at almost 550. So, there's another $350,000 or so that, we hadn't budgeted that is now available to our budget. So again, I would recommend, kind of building our reserves, keeping a healthy balance in the circuit breaker fund, making some necessary one-time purchases that we can, having the circuit breaker number come into the ballpark at 2.5. That gives us some good flexibility in the fiscal 20-year budget and beyond.
Other questions?
Do we have to worry about how the state is allocating the circuit breaker funds? I know that we had that issue with the 5 checks coming in 1 year and that.
Well, this assumes worst-case scenario.
Okay.
So this actually would assume, because now this might not happen either.
Okay.
This assumes that we're going to get all 4 quarterly payments in fiscal 19.
Right.
So we actually got the last payment of 18 in this fiscal
Right,
period.
right.
So we're technically, again, we don't want to be up against that cap. So we're projecting all 5 quarterly payments. I know that sounds weird, for 5 quarterly payments to hit 1 fiscal year.
Okay.
So worst-case scenario, we get that payment on June 30th. It's hitting here. That's factoring into the $3 million.
Okay.
If that doesn't happen, and we get the 4th quarter payment in July 1st, July 2nd or whatnot, then obviously, what is the quarterly payment?
It'll be 713,000.
Okay. Well, that's weird that it came so close to that number. Yeah, that wasn't planned.
No.
But it would be very close to that, so then obviously you wouldn't be near that cap.
Okay.
But we want to protect ourselves, just in case we ever got the 4 or 5 payments
Right.
all at one time.
Right, well, I know that was a concern.
It's a concern, yeah.
Other questions?
I don't have really a question, but I have a comment. One of the things that concerns me as I read through the reasoning why we're getting, this type of variance here is this change in the steps of the hires, the new hires versus the folks that are leaving the system for some reason. I don't expect that we have the answer right now, but I think it would be important to make sure that we're keeping high level of teaching ability in the system. People, I know it's nice to get quality teacher for a lower price, because that's what we're dealing with in this budget. But at the same time, I would like to make sure and keep an eye on the fact that we need that quality still in there. And I do think people that come in with masters in experience sometimes will bring more to a position. So as we go through recruitment and we look for our teachers and so on, I think it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I think what you're going to see is a natural just replacement savings of, we certainly, when hiring, most teachers these days are coming in at least with a master's degree, if not a higher degree, but you've got just a natural savings because people aren't making lateral moves in districts later in their career. So you're not seeing people typically coming to a district with 8, 10, 15 years of experience. It happens, but it doesn't happen frequently. Typically, when a teacher retires, they're replaced with a teacher who is least senior, right? So they might only come in with, they have the degree, but they may only have a few years of teaching experience. Usually they're coming out of college or they've had a few. You don't get many teachers that actually transfer after, like, say, 10 years from one district to go work in another, where you would actually have to kind of honor that higher rate. So you're going to see a savings just through that natural replacement of staff.
And that's true, so I think it's very important for us to keep an eye on the fact that maybe we offer other incentives when we look at our contract, and keep in mind that maybe education costs, reimbursement, keeping our teachers moving into the next step might be just as important in attracting excellent talent. So just to keep that in mind, I have to be honest and say that I don't remember exactly what the education reimbursements are and so on the existing contract, and we're in the middle of finalizing that, so I'll go through that too. But just, I am keeping that in mind as we go along. Thank you.
How many retirees do we have this year?
Coming
Say
up,
we-
or
Oh,
this
yeah,
year?
do you happen to know? Is it like 11?
Yes.
How much?
11?
11, okay.
11 retirements?
I know the total number, so that's including everyone, not just teachers, so I'm at 18.
I think teachers is 11,
Yeah.
for some reason.
10 and one administrator.
Oh, sorry, 10. 10 teachers, 1 administrator, and I bet the rest is support staff.
That's right. Food service.
Okay.
Yeah, 3.
Great. Anybody else have any questions on this report?
No, maybe just for your own sake, do you want to, I don't want to ask you to do something here, back up to the page we skipped over with the school choice? Do you
Oh,
want to
sure.
just touch base on that particular fund? And
Yep.
if there were any other things you wanted to highlight on that page, I think you grabbed most of them.
Yep.
But just the school choice offset
Sure.
that we won't need to take.
So that's at the top of page 3. The only thing I changed from the report in April was that was through third quarter, and I made this through April 30th. Okay. So, right now, the current balance in school choice is 1.595 million. Estimating a little bit more in May and June. And so that, estimating it to be at 1.615 million. And as we're going, we won't need the offset to special ed tuitions. That used to have the 250 in there. So that's why that estimated balance is higher. And as a reminder, we're plan to use that for the one-on-one computer initiative for the 5th and 9th grade students.
And what was the cost of that again, the one time, the one-on-one?
I have that. It's on my desk.
Ballpark?
Yeah.
I want to say it's like $75,000 per year for the lease. Because I want to say it's around $300,000 when we're fully
Yes.
leased.
Just one thought on school choice. It's in line with this, but also with what Mr. Cole and Mr. Mabono came up and talked about was, I think the Senate Ways and Means budget was proposed out, they sent their recommendations today. It doesn't look like we did much better,
Okay.
that with the Senate either, so.
I saw an alert this afternoon, but I honestly haven't seen the cherry sheet yet.
Yeah,
or the
it was
revised
about
number.
11 million.
Okay.
So it sounds about the same as it has always
Okay.
been. But when we went to the Day on the Hill, I think that we talked about some other alternatives with our reps to help generate maybe some revenue. And maybe we could include the representatives from the teachers in what those are, so they could include that as part of their talking points. Because if Chapter 70 isn't going to change much, then I think for Chelmsford,
Right.
I think we should support, obviously, the foundation reform. But there are other things I think that could benefit Chelmsford that we might need a little bit of help on to kind of advance.
Yeah, no, when I talked to Donna and Ben in the group, I'll make sure we had some talking points that we met with the legislature on. I'm sure you'd be supportive, so we'll share them with you and just have kind of a joint kind of position on them.
Right. And one of them was related to school choice. That's where this was all going, so.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions?
I would just suggest a motion just to accept the report as a report of progress.
I make a motion to accept the report for the 2019 local budget projection. What was the last part of it?
As a report of
Report of
progress.
Report of progress.
As what?
A report of progress.
As a report in progress.
Second.
Any further questions or comments? Right. Do roll call, or do we just all at once?
There's no motion around this one, so regular
All
one's
right,
fine.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Great, 5-0.
Thank you. Next item up on the agenda, I'm going to ask Joanna again to kind of just walk you through a few transfers. She'd already alluded to these in the previous report, but Joanna, if you don't mind.
So overall, I'm requesting 4 budget transfers. 3 I just highlighted in the projection. One is to take the favorable variance from special ed contracted services to fund $22,000 of sped transportation, also $29,000 for the utilities, and then for the $2,000 of employee separation costs. I just wanted to kind of keep a little bit of the labor accounts together. So one of our favorable vacancies in curriculum over to employee separation. So the total transfers would be $53,000. And then the second one is a new one. This is requesting that we transfer money from the district-wide computer services category into the instructional technology category for $66,000. And this is because Bill Silver would like to start to purchase the devices for the staff for the one-on-one initiative and get that order going. We're favorable in that category, district-wide computer services, because of E-rate. And we want to take some of that savings and some of his other savings and put it down into instructional technology.
Quick question. What do we have in the E-rate account?
So this year it was $36,000.
Okay.
And I already made that journal entry in December. So what we do is we pay the internet bill out of the local budget.
Sure.
And then once the E-rate funds come in, I credit, local, and I debit E-rate.
Thank you.
On the second transfer, any reason why there's a big difference between the high school and the 2 middle schools in terms of?
Yeah, I talked to Bill about that. The overall quote is for $66,000, and when we just did the math, it's roughly 80%, 10 and 10, and he is purchasing a few extras, and for right now, we're putting the transfer into the high school, and then if he wants to change that, it's at least in the category, and I can transfer more down to the middle schools.
Are these going to be the same devices that the students are going to get? What are they using for a device?
It's a Chromebook.
Chromebook.
These are slightly more robust, a little bit bigger machine for the
Yeah.
staff.
Okay.
But they're all using the Chrome platform.
Yep, good question.
If you just think about it, the technology budget is really separated into 2 different pages. One is early in the budget book, and that's like all the administrative charges, and that's where the E-rate money kind of came in as a reimbursement. But if we want to really make an expenditure, and as Joanna said, kind of track it to the school level even, we need to move that money into the instructional budget. Technically, we could charge it to the higher account, but then we'd be like trying to track it poorly, to be quite honest with you. So we're going to move it into the instructional line and then make the purchase.
Any other questions? Do we have to do 2 different?
I would personally do 2 different motions, and then it would be a roll call on both.
All right. Hold on, just to read this. Do I have to read these each line item?
I can help you if you'd like.
Yeah, would you mind?
Okay, no problem.
Thanks.
I would recommend that you make a motion to approve a transfer from other instructional services sped to special education transportation in the amount of $22,000. Other instructional services, special ed contracted services to fuel at the high school for $29,000.
Okay.
And you can do it all together. And then curriculum director salary to employee separation costs of $2,000 for a total of $53,000.
All right, I'm gonna go with that one first. I make a motion to have a budget transfer from other institutional services to sped transportation for $22,000, other institutional services sped to the fuel for the high school for $29,000, curriculum director's salary to employee separation costs for $2,000, for a total of $53,000.
Any seconds?
Second.
Any questions on that? Okay, Al?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
Donna?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
All right. I make a motion to approve a budget transfer for the district-wide computer services to the institutional
Instructional.
Instructional
Technology.
technology for this Chelmsford High School for 53,000, for the instructional technical account for the McCarthy for 6,500, the instructional technical for the Parker for 6,500, for a total of $66,000.
Seconds?
Very, very well worded.
Thanks. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, Al?
Aye.
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
Donna?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Aye.
It's not as easy as you guys think. Just throwing it out there.
It was easy. Al did it in his sleep.
I know. Al has 9 years of experience.
Well, thank you very much for that, and we'll make those transfers, and then when you see the May monthly report, you'll see that those transfers have been reflected. So, all right, moving on. Next report of the evening is actually Joanna again. We're going to do an overview for you on student transportation, and Peter Prokalis, our transportation coordinator, is here as well. Love to invite Peter up in case there's any questions, but Joanna has some additional information to walk through with you.
Okay. We had provided some updates to transportation last May at this time, and then also again in August. So this is kind of taking a look back at the entire year, this school year, to see what we've done in transportation. So the first one is, we're going to talk about riders. Right now, we have 3,410 riders on 29 buses each day. The buses make 3 runs each morning and afternoon, starting with the high school students and then going to the middle school and then the elementary. We also have 8 late day run, 3 days a week from October to June for students who'd like to participate in after-school activities. And typically the buses are running between 6:30 in the morning and end by 5 p.m. The next section talks about our fee structure. And separately, there's a vote after we get done with this for you to approve the fee structure for next school year. Basically, how much does a bus pass cost? Right now, it's $175 for early bird, $200 for regular, and $225 for late. And then we're recommending a couple changes. One is to add a $100 one starting February 1st if you're coming into the district mid-year. And we're also recommending a change of when the late registration starts. In the past, it's been August 15th, and we're recommending we back that up to August 1st to encourage families to register sooner to help us with our process with bus routes, bus stops, and getting the bus passes out before school. So here's a little chart just reminding everybody who pays and who doesn't pay. And basically everybody pays unless you're K to 6 over 2 miles. Okay. The next page is registering to ride the bus. And as you recall, we have asked all families to register to ride the bus even if you don't have to pay a fee. We need to know you're out there so that we can schedule an efficient route and assign your bus stop. I've put together, last year we put out several Connect Ed messages trying to remind families, we'll continue that again, to register to ride the bus using MCC online. And that's both registering and paying if you need to pay. And I cannot stress this enough. You need to register to ride the bus even if you don't have to pay. Here's the chart of how many registered and when. So last May to June 30th, 1,888 students registered to ride for early bird, which was great. And then July to August 15th, 828. And then here's where the bubble happened. From August 15th to August 26th, 333 students registered to ride the bus. And then the following, after school started, August 27th to September 7th, 180 students. So that was our big peak spike right before school that happened. So that's why we're asking families to please register before August 1st. And then from September to January 31st, we had 145, and then February on just 36.
Can I just ask a quick question
Yeah,
on this?
sure.
So when we had this big bubble here in,
Yep.
from August 15th to September 7th,
Yep.
what was the impact on the bus routes that we had already established? Did we have to redo those, or?
We eventually did, but not in time for the start of school.
Okay.
Because those were established, the bus passes were out,
Right.
the drivers were running their test runs,
Right.
and that was what we went with.
I think that's important to emphasize for people, too.
I
I think
agree.
we do that later in the
A
report.
little bit
We
later
do-
in the report, we try to
Yes.
be a little bit clearer about it, just
Yeah.
because this really does throw a big snag in things. We have to commit by a certain date to the bus routes and the bus passes, and we can speak to that a little bit later. But when you get 500 kids that register, say, the first week of school, the bus routes were already published, but, we're already running the bus routes. So those kids are basically assigned an existing stop. It may not be the stop that people want, because we can't go changing a bus route we've already told parents and communicated what the pickup times and drop-off times are going to be. So we obviously take the information in, the children get assigned a bus stop. Again, might not be what they want. And then usually by the middle of September, there's a little bit of a shakeout. Peter has time to reevaluate runs. Do we need to add a bus here, move a bus here? And then there's almost like a second. We don't reissue passes, but like a second, the bus routes are updated. Parents can go into X2 and actually see bus stop time changes and pickup drop-off locations. So that happens throughout September.
So that's, and I know we're going to talk about this later in the report, but I don't think we can emphasize it enough that it's not just about the pickup and drop-off times, but it's the time it takes the entire route to happen so that you can get to school on time,
Right.
right? So I think that we have to make sure that we're attentive to that as well.
And I think to Joanna's point, by bumping up the date from August 15th to August 1st, and again, just continually kind of notifying people with the emails and the Connect Eds, the more information that we have by that August 1st date, that's the data that we're going to use to create the first set of runs for the year. And hopefully we'll get the vast majority of people to apply by that point. And if you, by chance, if you don't, it's not that you're not going to be able to ride the bus, but you're making the routes inefficient, and you're also not necessarily going to get the pickup drop-off time that you want, because we can't go changing the bus stop for 40 other kids that are already on the bus stop assigned, because we have to add 3 different stops or routes and things like that.
Thank you.
The next section is talking about the bus routes and the bus passes, and just a little recap. We've made some changes in the past few years. We hired Peter as a full-time transportation coordinator in July of 2017. We brought a bunch of responsibilities back in-house, such as the routes and the stops that the bus company used to do. We have a software tool that helps us do all this. And we have this flow between the software and X2 so that families can see in the portal where their bus number and their bus stop time and all that. This, I don't know if you've seen before, it's a little chart of each school, the number of buses, the number of students, and the average count on the bus.
What's the optimal number? What do you?
We'll save those questions for Peter a little bit later, but I think, the capacity is much higher. It's like 70 or something, so less is better. It's just quicker, people getting students on and off and the time and.
Yeah, it really depends too. We can get into some of the specifics, but how many stops the bus is making. If you have to come to a stop and open up the doors, if 6 or 7 kids get on, it's a lot different than just one child getting on and then having to drive a little bit more and getting one more. So it's less the overall number as long as you're within the max. It's more like the route efficiency around a total number of stops on the route and just geographically how close they are.
Okay.
I have to, just as an aside,
Yeah, of course.
look, I really hadn't looked closely at this information, but it was actually astonishing how many kids we actually do transport to school, every day, morning and afternoon. But I was particularly surprised by the high school and the number of riders we had at the high school. That's, half of the high school actually taking the school bus. So that number did jump out at me.
And we kind of talked about, you create the routes, you mail the out the bus passes, and we sent them out last year, August 16th. We'll do the same this year, this coming August, and then we keep sending them out. The kindergartners have a blue pass, and everybody else has a different color. They were green this year, and that has the bus number, bus stop, and pick-up and drop-off times. And this information is also in X2. And they also get a little plastic holder if they'd like. Some parents put it in their own little holders for their children. And then this is just a summary that we've kind of all talked about doing things in-house. Peter does have access to GPS, so he can see what the bus companies, buses are doing. Everything's online, registering and paying. Remember, you have to register even if you don't have to pay a fee. There's going to be a quiz at the end asking that question. The complaints are handled through Peter, while the staff at the schools also help with that, and we appreciate all their help with that. We really try to bring it in to our office so that we can aggregate them all and work with the bus company and correct things all at once. And just to recap what Dr. Lang said about since school starts in August, we're going to try to get everything, all the data in by August 1st, have it all created. Things go out mid-August, and then in mid-September, we'll go over that on the flyer, we'll issue changes to routes and stops as we get another month or so's worth of data in for the people who just register after August. Ready for the next one? Okay. The next one is the rates. So there's a one-page requesting that you approve the early registration rate of $175 per student and a family cap of $400, regular of $200 from July 1st to July 31st, $200 with a family cap of $500. Late registration period, this is the change, August 1st to January 31st of $225 with a family cap of $500. And then this is new, half-year registration, February 1st forward, per student $100, still a family cap of $500.
Anybody have any questions on?
Yes,
Okay.
I have a question to ask. That bubble of registration, do we know if it was people who have to pay or folks who don't have to pay? Do we know the majority of the people that signed during that bubble?
Probably both.
You think both, okay. And another thing is, every year you have to register?
Yes,
Even if you don't pay,
correct,
and even if you registered in prior years?
correct.
That is typically the number one thing that parents may not realize, or folks who are taking care of registering for transportation. So that's why I asked that question, because I wonder if that is part of the problem here. And so it would be important for everybody to realize that every year you have to register, and you have to register even if you don't pay.
And when we get to the flyer, which is next, that's the first thing. It's at
That's
the
on
top
there.
of the flyer, yes.
And then my other question is, if someone does not have access to online, then how do they register?
They can come here and we can help them register online. But we had a very successful online, once we got them on the site, I think most families liked that feature rather than, writing a check or, all that there. They liked that progress.
It's been a good transition.
Yes.
Thank you.
I
Questions
had a
on?
couple questions, and I'm not sure if they come here, but I'll just ask them. One of the things I think that also happened with that bubble is that we were so inundated with phone calls and questions is that the business office actually had to kind of shut down and help man the phones for the transportation department. And I think that people need to realize is that, that's one of the consequences of not getting things done in a timely fashion. So we, you and the business office were helping out because there was just no one way that one person could manage it. And then people had concerns about whether or not their message had been received and why they weren't getting phone calls back and things like that. So I think that whatever we can do to encourage, this early bird or, registration by the deadline, I think will be very important. With regards to the parameters that we had the speaker earlier come up, who determines what the parameters will be for the bus stops?
Do you want to do that stuff now, or did you
Oh,
want?
that's what I didn't know.
Well, no, I just didn't know if we wanted to approve
Yeah,
the
we'll-
fee structure.
yeah, we'll-
And
Oh,
then-
sure, yes, I apologize,
No,
yes.
no, but just some of the
Yes.
other stuff might be
Yes.
covered in the flyer too.
Okay,
And then
great.
if not, maybe we could handle some of those.
Okay, great.
If you don't mind.
Nope, not at all.
So I'm going to throw in another
Oh, sure.
thought, which is that if we do know that that bubble was built up of mostly folks who don't have to pay, and they're just registering at the last minute, or folks who had registered before don't have to pay and just didn't register again, if we could tell that, if there's any way to get them by the end of the year, I think this February thing is a good idea, but that's for people who have to pay. For those, no,
Well,
right?
it would only affect them, right, but,
Right,
yeah,
will
even if
only
you come
impact them.
mid-year, we still have to know about you.
Right.
Yeah, but go ahead.
That's typically the problem, I think, is if you don't have to pay something, you might not realize how important it is that you go ahead and register and get going again for the coming year, and what tremendous impact it's still going to have on the system. You're just entitled to it. So I think it would be, if you could find a way that at the end of 1 year, for returning students who fall in that category, if you can have it signed off, yes, we're registering, or no, we're not registering, and input them. I don't know, some system, it might not be this year, but think it through. It might have help. I don't know. I would have to look at the statistics and see, but I think that's typically what happens.
Sorry, Jay, what are the ways that we're reaching out to parents now to notify them? I know that we have, Connected, we have this flyer.
An
What else?
excessive amount of connected messages.
Well, yeah.
No, but connected messages, so like automated emails with the information. We'll be queuing those up again after the vote and we have the fee structure approved. But almost on a weekly basis throughout this whole period. We may even integrate some phone calls just so that, people kind of get a voice reminder as well.
Maybe the principals could include it in their newsletters?
Yeah, we can
I'm
certainly
sure
do
they
that, PTOs can.
Right.
I do, have a sneaky suspicion that a good number of the late registrants were people that didn't necessarily pay in the past, only because prior to last year, anyone who was over the 2 miles and didn't have to pay automatically got mailed the bus pass. So I think there may have been just some feeling like the bus pass is just going to come in the mail, because it always has. And then when it didn't come in the mail, because we were making people sign up, they all of a sudden had to scramble and sign up. So I think going through the process once is going to help this year. Hopefully, we'll be able to kind of keep that data. But it will be, phone calls, voicemails. We can do newsletters. PTOs can put it out.
Chelmsford Telemedia.
Yeah, we'll just keep kind of pushing it.
Have these messages already started?
Well, no, once we approve the fee structure.
Okay. I guess my point is that the early bird's supposed to start May 1st. Have we had any signups yet?
No, 'cause
No, there's no registration.
Okay, so maybe we can bump out the end, maybe. I mean, so we're supposed to be May 1st to
June 30th.
We're already a week into that. Do we
Yeah.
bump it out a couple days just to give people that?
I don't personally think that's going to be a
Okay.
huge thing. I mean, we're still giving people almost 2 months to go in and sign up. We just, typically have always said May 1st, although we haven't started taking registrations until mid-May
Okay.
previously. So I don't think that's that big of a deal. If it were like a week or two,
Yeah.
it'd be an issue.
Yeah.
But where it's almost 2 months, I think it's still okay.
Okay.
We have to put a big push on before June 12th when the kids leave for the summer, because I think people are then going to go into summer mode and they're not going to be thinking about it. So we will be putting a push on to just kind of get this information out, just, hitting people with emails and reminders that, please do this before you leave for the summer, just so that Peter and staff can start working on routes for next year.
And the website will get updated with all the new stuff?
Yep. Yep.
Stick a big sign on the bus door. You must re-register if you want to ride next year. That's just idea. But honestly, I think that big bubble is probably comprised of quite a few, because I know from
We'll be able to
personal
track it this
experience.
year too and see if it goes down, and then maybe we'll know.
Yeah, I think
Well,
you're
no,
just
why-
saying there's no incentive for them to register early, right? There's no urgency behind it, so.
Well, the incentive is though,
Yeah.
because those people were not happy that they didn't get a bus stop or a bus
Right.
time that they wanted.
Well, right.
So I think now, knowing that they have to do it, like, there's really no disincentive. If you don't have to pay, why wouldn't you go on immediately and sign up for the bus? It's not gonna hurt you. So I think that's a messaging that we can push for people. But I think also when we get to the flyer, when we start talking about if you register by X date, and I forgot it off the top of my head, then, the bus passes or the routes are gonna be generated based on that data. That's what you're gonna be assigned to stop on. So if you do sign up late, you're gonna be assigned to a pre-existing stop until the middle of September, when we kind of reconfigure things. So I think that would be an incentive for people, and there really is no disincentive if they don't have to pay.
Is that on the letter now?
No, but that's after this memo when we get through the pricing. It's on the top of the last page that you just picked up.
I'd probably put a little more emphasis on it. People don't always read these
The
things,
red flashing.
something.
Bus lights, red bus.
Yeah, but we can even just take information from that flyer and include it like individually in emails.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just, we'll come up with something.
Yeah.
But we'll start pushing it.
If I'm not mistaken, I think, wasn't one of the problems that people would fill the form out and then not submit it to?
Oh, yeah, that one. I remember that.
So have we done anything to, so
We
to like,
created some print screens to help people walk through the process now.
Okay.
I have to be honest, it's probably not the best system, but it's what we have to work with right now. A lot of people did create their account.
Yeah.
And they thought that's all they had to do.
Right.
Like I said, we just recently created some print screens. If they want to look at that, it walks them through the whole process about creating an account, how to add a student, how to register. We've cleaned up the registration form itself, because we had boxes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we had boxes 1 through 5 if you were free, or boxes 1 through 5 if you were financial assistance. And it was just too many boxes. So now, since everybody has to be done separately anyway, we reduced it down to one box for free over 2 miles and one for financial assistance, just because you have to do them separately anyway. You would check the multiple boxes if you have to pay because of the family cap. The system knows how to honor that.
is there any way to put like a warning when they go log out of the screens, like, hey, did you
I
forget to
think the
submit?
issue is that you had to pay, but you didn't have to pay.
Right.
But you had to go
You
through
still
the
had to
process
submit
like you
the
were.
form,
Right,
right.
exactly,
So
like you were
Is there
paying.
any way to like if you go to get out of a document, it goes, do you want to save this document? No.
Or, yeah, you may have to put something around completing the transaction, because like I said, you would have to look like you were going to pay, but then you didn't pay, and that was the part
Because
that
then
they
people
didn't
thought
do.
they had registered and they didn't
Right,
register.
exactly.
So if anything, that could just kind of remind people, don't forget to submit your form.
So we'll vote on the rates, and then we'll do the flyer.
Okay, so I'm making a motion, okay. I make a motion to approve the transportation fees for the 2019-2020 school year.
Second?
Any questions, any more comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
I think it was good to just kind of get the financial vote out of the way, and now you can talk more logistics about things.
Yeah.
All right, so continuing on.
Yep. So then the next handout is the flyer. So we've had the flyer all along. Now, it's a little bit longer. We've put a little more in it. Very top, all students must register online. It's time to register. And it tells you where to go on our website. And then there's the rates. And then there's the little chart about who has to pay. And there's the, all students are required to register every year if they would like to ride the bus. And we can work on bolding that or putting it everywhere or whatever. We take your suggestions. There's the little chart of who pays and who doesn't pay, and then top of page 2 is the detail that Dr. Lang talked about regarding the bus when we're gonna do the bus routes and the stops. And then kind of a second wave, you know, after the start of school, with modifications in mid-September.
So, I'll let you finish, go ahead.
And then it talks about financial hardships, and talks about if you have an alternate address such as daycare. And then it also has Peter's phone number, and then again references some help documents on our website. And then it also lists MCC eSchool's phone number, should they get a hitch there. We find that happens more like if families are doing this at night, you know, and we're not here, maybe they can just call MCC and get that coaching to hit submit, or over the weekend. Well, actually, I don't think MCC's there over the weekend, but we just put their number too for another resource for them.
All right, so like on that paragraph, right, it reads, all students are required to register every year if they would like to ride the bus, da-da-da-da, and then it says at the end, therefore bus routes may be established with better efficiency and on-time performance. I think you probably need to make that a little more, like, hey, if you want to get your bus stops established.
It says students who register after August 23rd will be assigned to an existing bus stop location based on the bus
Right.
routes created.
I mean, if you want to get more people to register early and get the bus stops they want, this is a benefit to the district being efficient on time. Well, I know, but my point is that people aren't going to catch.
Right, so in
Yeah.
other words, highlighted.
Yeah,
stress
bold
it,
Right,
you know,
find a better way
bigger
to
font
communicate that. Because the complaints we get, and you'll get to see this at the beginning of the year, is all those people are like, I didn't get the route I want, the routes are all screwed up, you know, it's all your fault, right? And then you tell people, you're like, well, 1,000 people registered after the date when they were generated, and they're like, oh. And I mean, if you can fix even 50% of that, we're in much better shape. So this sounds like a benefit.
Well, but we can kind of go back, it is a benefit, I agree
Well, it's
with
a
you.
benefit to the district, but if you word this as a benefit to the parents,
It's a benefit, but it's a benefit to both, because
but
if
yeah,
we
it
get
doesn't
the
read that way.
information. No, but we can even just take this, I don't think there's anything wrong with this information, but we can kind of figure out who our target markets are.
Yeah.
And almost individually, like, send emails to groups. So if we want to send an email to people who are over the 2 miles, who are going to be free, whether they ride or not, we could isolate those people and actually just send them a different email incentivizing why it's important for them to sign up. And we could have that go as a blast. We could then have a different email that takes different information out of here that goes to a different target and send that out to that particular
Okay.
group. I think just conceptually, hope you don't have an issue with like the info, but
No,
then
the
we have
info's
to just kind
fine.
of figure out like how we want to incentivize it.
how are you
for the
marketing that
different groups.
information? And who
Right.
you're marketing to is what's important.
Because it does help us.
I'm
But
notorious.
it also helps the parents as
Because
well.
my wife will be like, did you read the thing on page 2 where it says XYZ? And I'm like, oh, I didn't read that far. And she's like, you need to read that. It's like, I'm one of those parents. I did register on time, though. I'm pretty sure.
I have one- That's good.
I'm sure you can check, but.
I have one more question.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, remind me about what's happening with if you pay the bus fee, but you then can drive to school when you don't need the bus fee anymore. What happens? What was the decision on that?
Well, that's a work in progress.
Okay.
So it has always been, if you buy a bus pass, and then, say, during your junior or senior year, you get your driver's license, you could turn that pass in at the high school and then get the decal to
Right.
be able to park at the high school without having to pay the parking fee at the high school. Now, where we're not going to have a fee at the high school, we're internally talking about that. So we are gonna have to come up with a policy around kind of free parking at the high school. While it's not an issue right now, just based on the student enrollment, if we have an increase in student enrollment and we didn't have enough parking spots for students to pay, whether they had to pay or it was free, we're gonna have to come up with some kind of like a lottery-type system or something that's actually in a policy, just so we don't get into issues. So we're working on that. When it comes to the bus fee, my initial take is that if someone actually signs up to take the bus and pays the fee, they're gonna have to pay the fee. If they elect to park at the high school afterward, that's certainly fine. There's no fee. You're just gonna have to register, but there's no fee to register. But I can't see us getting into a situation where we're prorating and reimbursing the fee, because we're also making the bus routes kind of predicated on people actually signing up and needing to ride. So that is gonna be an issue for us. I don't see us getting in a situation where we can reimburse. It would become very difficult to manage.
Okay. So at this point, since we don't have a policy on that and we haven't established that for sure, it shouldn't be part of this, but you might get some questions. That was my thought.
What do you mean it shouldn't be part of it?
Explaining that because people will might question.
Well, that's why it's not there. So right now, like, if you want to ride the bus, you have to pay the fee.
Right.
There's no reimbursement later.
So I think the reason you're doing this is, one, to avoid a lot of calls and to provide as much information as possible right up front. So I'm thinking of the
Right.
people who might call you and ask you what that policy is.
Well, oh, no, I hear what you're saying. I think that's going to be a different email that only goes to the high school.
Okay.
Because it's really targeted to the high school. We can email the high school parents and whatnot and explain the new process,
Yeah.
how they're going to sign up. But in that email, we can be clear about what the expectation is.
Probably impacts only 100 to 150 people, maybe more.
Well, but still, that's just a message we can just send to the entire high school, but we don't really have to get K-8 involved.
Okay.
Just one comment. When we do put this out, another place we should absolutely give this to is
Excuse me.
social media. Chelmsford News probably. There's a couple other
Yeah.
town social media sites.
Sure.
If anybody wants to volunteer as tribute for that.
We can come up with some nice graphics and kind of push that.
So now can we talk about that other?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So one of the things that I feel pretty strongly about is that parents need to know what the parameters are for where the bus stops will be before they make the purchase of their bus pass. Because I do think that having to drive your child some distance to the bus stop, is almost, I don't know. It seems like, I don't know, counterintuitive to me that you would have to drive to the bus stop so that your child could be transported to school. And I think that we have to let parents know, what is the distance going to be that we are going to expect the kids may have to walk. I think that sometimes some of the feedback that we get is that the bus routing system doesn't appear to make sense. So in some cases, you may have a student, as the parent spoke, about who may be walking, 0.6 miles to the bus stop, and then in the center of town, they're stopping every, 25 feet. And I only know this because I get stuck behind those buses. And so there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to me about, like, how did this get decided that, elementary kids would walk this far, but, we have these other groups of kids.
Right.
Is it the volume? I don't know. Is it, some of the things that I was thinking about, is it the speed limit on the road? Is it the access to sidewalks? Is it the volume of traffic? I mean, we had another situation where, but we had a couple bus stops that were close together, and it made perfect sense, given there were no sidewalks. The speed limit on the road is about 40 miles an hour, and the volume of traffic is incredibly high. So, what do we do? How do we go about communicating this to parents, or what are the parameters that we're going to set so that people will know well in advance, what their obligation may be towards getting their kids to the bus stop, or whether or not they even want to buy a bus pass because, if they've already got them in the car to drive them to the bus stop, then maybe they just want to drive them to school. I don't know.
Speaking in global terms, I think our existing policies talk about obviously being in conformance with the state laws around transportation. The big restriction, which we don't do, but I mean, technically, 2 miles is the cutoff. I would not expect someone to walk 2 miles to get to a bus stop, but that's like the state, kind of the state rules around that. I think when we talk to Peter, but obviously, we try to make bus stops as close to people's homes as possible. You do have to take into consideration if it's a main road, if it's a side road. You don't want to have the bus stopping every 10 feet, like you indicated, particularly if it's a side road. We have tried to move bus stops out to common intersections, whether they be large or small, so that the bus isn't stopping at everyone's house along the bus route. It's just not efficient in doing so. Obviously, high school kids, I think, should be expected to walk a little bit further than middle school kids, who should be expected to walk a little further than elementary school kids. There's no across the board. And we can ask Peter, I don't know, like specific mile-wise, but you're going to run into a situation of like some one-off type situations because of a number of different reasons, where someone may have to walk a little bit longer than others. We don't have definitive, clear-cut, you're not going to walk more than 0.2 miles if you're an elementary school student, 0.5 for middle school or whatnot. But I think I haven't seen many routes, and I've rode many of the routes too, where elementary or middle school students are walking more than half a mile. Like, I'm not seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing most people, if you live on a particular street, you may have to walk to the end of that street, or walk to a cross street, something like that. We don't have people walking exorbitant, distances to get to buses. But Peter, do you have like a framework kind of to give a ballpark of what like an average elementary school bus stop would be, or?
It starts with the high school kids. Like, the school starts early enough as it is. If we have X amount of stops over a certain amount, they're gonna have to get on the bus before 6:30. Creates even more issues. So the high school buses basically stop at cross streets, unless they're on a main street, and then, because we don't want anybody getting hurt when they're out there. The middle school, again, they're a little younger. We try to, again, cross streets or on busy streets in front of someone's house, just so nobody gets hurt or something. So, is there X amount of miles for each stop? No. It's all subjective as you go through the route. Like a quiet neighborhood, we'd like to have people meet at a central location. The elementary window that we have, the buses leave McCarthy and Parker at 8:15. They have to be to school they have the kids to school by 8:59. That window is very tight with the traffic everywhere. So that's a battle in itself too. So again, it's a give and take thing. In advance, would I know where the stop would be? Possibly, but it wouldn't be etched in stone. People call me and say, I live here, can you see what you can do? And I have no problem doing that. But again, if the bus, every time it stops, it slows it down. And if we can't get them to school on time, then it creates more issues, So again, safety, we don't want anybody getting hurt. But nobody is over. I did look at that. I think the longest we have is 0.8, and that's a high school student, and it's in an area of a town where the bus can't actually get any closer. So no one's really walking that far. The problem is I think everybody wants to stop in front of the house, and that's just not doable unless we bring in more buses or whatever we do, so.
Are there parameters like the bus company says, like, we don't want to go down a cul-de-sac, we don't want to go down a dead-end street? Do they?
They had mentioned the cul-de-sac thing only because when they go down there, like on trash day, the barrels are out that people park their cars. So this year we did try to eliminate a lot of those. But they don't really say too much. They will let me know if they don't think they should be going down there. We had one this year, I forget the name of the street, but we went out and looked at it, both of us, and it was fine.
Yeah. There is a lot of communication between, like, the transportation company, North Reading, and Peter. If, I've heard a bus driver say, like, I don't think this particular stop they don't think it's safe. I'd like to do it, a different way. Our big thing is just to have the bus drivers communicate with Peter so that we can actually incorporate any agreed upon changes into the route sheets. The biggest issue I have, or I think we have, is the substitute drivers. If they're coming onto a route and the bus driver has deviated from the route sheet, even, to do what they think is correct, that sets the substitute driver up for failure, really, because the parents and the kids aren't expecting someone deviating from the route sheet. So if someone wants to make a recommendation about a stop, whether it be closer or further or whatnot, we just say have that dialogue with Peter. And there will be situations, and I know, one that was spoken about. I have had conversations with the bus company around not having buses go down, and this was new this year, cul-de-sacs. It came up a couple of different times, and it really is it's a safety issue. And you've got to take into consideration, do we want to put a bus down a cul-de-sac to potentially have them have to do a 3-point turn with kids on the bus? Is that safer than having people come up from the cul-de-sacs to meet the bus at the main street? My personal opinion, again, and we work with the bus company, it's safer to have the people come out of the cul-de-sac and come to the top of the street to get on the bus, as opposed to putting the bus in a compromising position where it could have to do, again, a 3-point turn. It's difficult on trash days. We didn't have a really snowy winter, but it's difficult if there's snowbanks on the side of the roads to maneuver some of these different scenarios. So I do know that there were instances where people had a different route because of a number of different areas. I think we try to communicate that. I have personally gone out to bus routes to meet with people, to talk to them about things. We're not going to make everyone happy. We're going to strive to hear them out to make sure that we don't have any real safety concerns. And Peter has said the same thing. It is a work in progress, particularly now we're only in year one of taking over the bus routes. I think really when you think about 3,500 kids who are being transported to and from school each day, and the number of complaints and concerns we hear, it's really a very small percentage.
No, I agree, but I do think that we do owe it to parents to explain this, someplace, that, we're not going down cul-de-sacs or one-way streets, that, your child, may have to walk, distance, whatever you want it to be, even if it's a range. I think that parents should know this ahead of time, because I think this is how they make the decisions about whether or not they want to buy the bus pass or they want to provide transportation for their kids. And I also think that when we provide that information ahead of time, then we're going to get less questions, because that information has been made available. It also looks much more objective and much more transparent and much more proactive. So I do think we do owe it to parents to make that information clear.
Can I just ask a clarification?
Sure.
So you want the parents to have the bus routes
No.
before?
No, what the parameters would be.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
I got it. Correct.
So essentially, you're asking for establishing a policy.
No, I think I'm
Oh.
just talking about that we should say to parents, this is what you can expect. Because I think you're right, it can't be hard and fast, right? I mean, because there are individual circumstances and things like that that would have to be taken into account. But I think that parents have to know, so, in this one particular case that we were referencing, for years, the bus went down the street and turned around on the cul-de-sac, and then it stopped. And there didn't seem to be a clear explanation for why that was. And so I think that one of the things that, we need to do is we need to be able to explain to parents ahead of time what the parameters are going to be, so that they'll understand maybe why even things change. Like, you had a bus stop here at one point, and, maybe this past year, and then it changed. Maybe that will help alleviate some of the concerns.
One thing to that point, though, there was kind of a history on a lot of the runs, particularly when the bus company was putting them together, that the runs didn't change from year to year. So the bus stop might have been the same 10 years ago.
Right.
Because a kid may have been at that particular stop. There were a lot of what we kind of consider dead stops, where there just aren't any children anymore. But by going through the online system now and actually having kids and families register for the bus stop, every year Peter can take that data and actually develop the routes to be efficient and not have the bus stopping at stops where there aren't kids anymore. So that, we do hear that from time to time. Well, there was always a bus stop here, or, when I moved to the neighborhood, there was a high school boy that had a stop here. We were expecting that stop to be there when my son went from elementary to middle school. But, just because there was a stop 10 years ago doesn't mean there's a stop now. If there's a way to kind of frame that for parents as well. But we're gonna make the bus stops every year based on the data we have. And I think that's gonna make it efficient for everyone, because your timings are gonna be better, the number of the kids distributed to the different buses can be better.
And I think
that is a change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if our goal is efficiency, then we have to make that clear. Okay, then you may be walking, some distance, we may avoid certain roads, things like that. We may have a goal for these major roads and crossroads, and having kids walk out to a main road and things like that. I don't have a problem with that. My concern is that it's not communicated well enough so that parents understand that this is what's going to happen. That our goal is efficiency, because, as you said, that time between middle school and elementary school drop-off is very tight. And everybody knows what the traffic is like in Chelmsford. It's been a big topic of discussion in town lately. So to help them understand that this is why we're doing this, because we want to get kids to school on time in the most efficient and safe manner, I think that that's going to help alleviate some questions and concerns down the road.
Well, even when you don't have, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Even when you don't have, efficiency is obviously important, but you also don't want to have kids on school buses for too long.
Right.
I think most of our runs are probably half an hour, ballpark, but when you start adding stops and you're creeping up to, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, a lot of that unstructured time is then basically, issues develop on the bus.
Yes.
As you know.
Yes.
That then roll into the school day.
Yes.
And, can take
Right.
a lot to overcome as well.
Right, and I think
So-
that's a great point. And again, I think that this is sometimes maybe things that people don't take into account. And the better job we can do getting that information out there, the rationale behind why it is that we're choosing the stops, the computer's choosing the stops that it's choosing, I think that, as I said, the better off we're going to be.
So are you looking to make this something on the website, or how would you communicate? By what forum would you?
Yeah, actually, I would say the website would probably be one of the best places to put it, is, under the transportation tab. I don't think it needs to be included in this. I think the memo, we just want to focus on dates, okay, and make sure that people register by the right. I think that's just way too much information. But I think if people were seeking more information, that,
How do we make bus stops paved
yeah,
or something?
basically, what is the goal of our transportation system? Safety, efficiency, and things like that. How do we determine where bus stops will be based on, a number of factors that we've talked about tonight?
I have one more question. What is our process for, I don't remember, I believe her name was, I don't remember the mom who presented this evening, her name. But the complaint that she brought and I haven't been part of these complaints and so on, so I don't know exactly what they were. But the way she stated it, it would raise a concern with me. When, you have 100 people signing off on it and sending you those signatures and so on. So what is our process for when somebody does file a complaint or submits a complaint? What do we do? What are we doing right now to address those?
Typically, like the right process to follow would be if someone actually has a concern, they would bring it forward to Peter
Okay.
in transportation. He would try to vet it, see if it was something that, needs to be looked at, can be accommodated or whatnot. I would bet most people are satisfied at that level. If they're not, then it would go to Joanna, who is Peter's supervisor.
Okay.
Joanna would review the matter. Again, if it needs attention or whatnot, she may intercede or work with Peter to try to find a resolution. If people aren't happy at that level, it then comes to me. Unfortunately, some people just come to me to start the process, but, we always try to kind of kick them down to go through the steps. And then when they bring it up to me, I might talk to them, email them, whatnot, and figure out what their concern is and see if I agree or disagree with them. On this particular case, I have been in correspondence with this individual multiple times throughout the course of the year. I personally visited the bus stop at least 3 or 4 times. I have ridden the bus. I just disagree with with the presenter's information about the particular stop. We can agree to disagree on whether it's appropriate or not me and you, the other individual. But it's not a matter that, it hasn't been looked at and it hasn't been given its fair attention. I just do not feel that what has been requested is warranted, and I've indicated as such.
I would say that Dr. Lang is right, that this situation was well looked at.
Okay.
But I do think that, as I said, that.
It doesn't mean people are satisfied, but it was certainly.
Absolutely, but that's not without, I'm just saying that I think that we did our due diligence in terms of getting out there. I was out there 3 times and taking a look at things. We may agree to disagree, but I think that one of the things that I took from it is that maybe we need to have on the website, maybe it's what you can expect and what you can't expect. Something along that line. So you can't expect door-to-door service. You can't expect that the bus route will be changed, in the middle of the year, whatever. Those kinds of things. But what you can expect is that our bus stops are going to be at the end of major roads or at crossroads or whatever. Those kinds of things that your child may have to walk, some distance to get there. Just that kind of thing.
No, I don't disagree with you, but I don't think the average person realizes how many factors actually go into the runs.
Absolutely not.
And, how many kids we're actually transporting, and like just all the moving parts, and the fact that, a bus that starts at the high school is really, yes, it might have 40, 50 kids on it, but that same bus has to do a route to be efficient, to then do a middle school route, to then leave that route to do an elementary route. And if you have a snag, and again, traffic has been
In the
very,
traffic,
very
right,
difficult.
exactly.
But you have a snag in traffic, and that your high school run can then throw off your middle school and your elementary run.
So maybe something to that effect.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But maybe something to that effect, that there's many factors that go into this.
Right.
Okay, when we're putting together the routes. And so as a result, here's what you can expect, when you sign up for a bus pass, and here's what you shouldn't expect, so that people will know.
Some communication, I think, would be important. The other thing is, I'm sure Peter's contact information is listed.
Oh, yes.
because he likes to publish that, right, Peter? So there it is. That's very important too. Thank you for explaining that because, you know, there's always many things that go into a particular situation, so I appreciate that. Being a parent who pays the fee and only gets one-way transportation because I drive in the morning, here's another thing I'm going to say. Actually, the bus transportation is extremely important for us in terms of safety, because when we're dropping off in the morning, I will tell you the congestion at the schools can be immense, and sometimes people don't follow the rules, which makes it even much more dangerous for other people. So I appreciate the fact that if we have a well-run transportation system that gets, it looks like about 60 to 70% of our children to and from school every day, because 3,000 and something out of the 5,000 that we've got, that's a substantial amount of transportation. So if we can manage that, that's terrific. I agree with Donna. I think good communication about that. And being on a busy road, I live on Parkhurst, I have always appreciated, there's no sidewalk. It's in the middle of fast people. I can appreciate what parents get concerned about too. And my neighbor across the street, they have to cross on that road and try crossing on Route 4, which some people have to. So the safety of it should be our number one concern. I appreciate that you went to investigate, that you personally went out there and saw it. And I think Donna's thought is important one, put it out there.
From the sign-up standpoint, you know, it get really, really hectic right at the beginning of the school year. Any way that we can make that less hectic? I know you had to take people from the business office, answering phones and all that.
I mean, I think this, changing this deadline will help, hopefully, you know, get people, the more people in advance we have, it'll help with that. And I think last year was the first year that we asked people to register. Everybody knows about that rode the bus this year, that they need to register. So the message is out there. They've been working on the kindergarten kids when they sign up here as far as you got to register for the bus. I know the principals, they have a presentation for that. You register for the bus, you'll get your student ID number and register online. So I think the more it becomes just an everyday thing, that'll improve. And maybe the online system itself will improve and it'll be, you know, no big deal. It'll take 2 seconds for people to do. Again, I'm only one person. They were great helping me. It's funny, when I'm on the phone talking to somebody, you can see the same person call 4, 5, 6, 7 times in a row on the caller ID. So it's just a little bit of patience will be okay, but I understand people want to get the kids to school. But I'm just one person, and the business office was fantastic. They all stepped in and we called everybody back. I emailed people back. But it was
to that point,
for a few weeks there.
Yeah, the first couple of weeks of school, I think, is always challenging, but to that point as well, even, again, Joanna's staff stepped up to help with triaging phone calls. We're gonna have to do this every September, but there's one individual, Peter, in the district that really does the routing. So the software program itself that does all of the routing, even though someone's helping take a call, the other staff in the business office aren't able to go into the system and actually like route people and kind of manipulate the routing software. So they're helping with triage and taking concerns and questions and calling people back with information. But still, if you do register late, there's that bottleneck because you have to go through Peter, who runs the transportation software, to make the adjustment. So I do think by stepping it up to August 1st, it's going to be helpful. I think, again, people going through this process now once, it's going to be helpful. You know, the bus routes or the stops, where we already have them this year, really, people are pretty accustomed to them at this point. The vast majority of people are satisfied with their routes, their stops. The stops just don't go away. You know, if the same child registers again for the bus, the computer's going to recognize where their stop was. So I don't think that's going to come as a surprise to people where their stop is next year when they get their pass. Times might be off a little bit based on where the bus route itself. But I don't actually think we're going to be that far off people's expectations on the bus stops and times for next year. The key, like Peter said, is just to register early, and we're gonna have to push that message.
So just a question about what happens if you get sick? And I hope you don't get sick.
Not allowed.
Like the bus routing thing is important, right? It's an important function. He's the only person who knows how to do it.
Well, I'm just saying, yeah, he is the person that does all the bus routing
Yeah.
for us. It's not like we have a a lot of people. Obviously, if Peter were sick, we'd have to work with someone from the software company to help us with the routing. It's not.
Just not get sick?
Yeah, we have a one-person transportation.
It makes you
shop.
feel better, I can log in from home, so if I mean, I can do this from home, so it's not the end of the world, but
Yeah,
I don't wanna
cross-training
get
is.
sick,
It's unfortunate, we just don't have that kind of redundancy in our district our size around that particular function. The software is just so specific, it wouldn't be something that you could even just train on for a couple of weeks to
And then
figure it
come
out.
back to it, like,
And then
in a
come
year.
back to it a year later, you'd have to start all over again. So I think, again, I think we did well last year, we're in good shape getting into this year. The key is gonna be just getting Peter the data as early as possible to start making those roads.
I think this year will be better, too. I mean, that was the
It's gonna be
first year
better-
we
it's
did
gonna be
it.
better every year.
It was the first year we did it, and this is the second year. I mean, it only gets, you just improve the process, yeah.
And I think people are more used to it.
And the new modification with the bus passes, everybody's comfortable with that now?
Yeah, that seemed to go well. I really didn't hear too many concerns this year about the bus pass.
Peter, thank you for everything.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Looking forward to September.
Register early.
Don't get sick.
My kids ride the bus, I get it. I've had complaints about the bus.
Good, thank you. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, next bit of information for you this evening. We finished our spring registrations for kindergarten, so just wanted to share that information with you. When we put the budget for fiscal '20 together, we had allocated 4 teachers at each school for kindergarten. And our kindergarten numbers actually came in very favorable, so just wanted to show you to date where we're at. Obviously, we're going to monitor this information because people can sign up, right through the late spring, summer, even into the school year. But our numbers were actually significantly higher last year at this point. And I think scheduling the 4 classes per school will be fine for the start of the school year. Obviously, we'll monitor it if anything changes. Within a couple of these numbers, the BIAM number, the 83, that actually also includes children who are in the ASD program, who are going to be coming up from CHIPS. So the 83 actually aren't even all in mainstream classrooms. So that actually makes those numbers even a little bit more desirable. The 70, the 80 at Harrington is a real number, and then the 68 at South Row as well. But still, even with the high number at Harrington with the 80, you're looking at average class size of 20, which is good. So I don't think, I don't have any concerns at this point in time. We actually only had a couple of kids come in for grade 1 registrations, which is great, because that used to be a grade level where we didn't have full day K, where we'd get a lot of ads. But I think we're in solid shape for next year. I'll obviously look at this again at the end of June, right as the school year is closing. If we ever got an abundance of registrations at a particular school that necessitated adding another teacher, I would come to you with that. But at this point in time, I think the budget, the way it's set, operating with 4 classrooms at each of the schools, we should be in good shape.
What were our numbers last year, with kindergarten?
At the end, or you mean at this time?
At this time?
I can email it to you tomorrow if you want, because Jane keeps the data, like, at the end of each session. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I can certainly email you tomorrow.
I do want to keep an eye on that number at Harrington, only because I know that there was a lot of kids coming in, ELL students, students with disabilities, so I want to make sure that if those classes have a lot of high needs, that we're providing the necessary support.
Okay.
A question, based on what happened last year, did you receive a lot of registrations after May?
It's honestly hit or miss. We had higher registrations at this point of the year before we ended the school year.
Okay.
No, the summer last year wasn't too bad. I mean, you're always going to get families that come to the community or families that move out. But we actually opened just with 4 kindergarten classrooms at each of the elementary schools for the current year that we're in as well. We didn't have numbers that necessitated a 5th anywhere. The last time we had to do a 5th was 2 years ago, and it was at Harrington. The numbers as the summer went on, we hit like a peak in mid-August. All of a sudden, we had like 6, 8 kids register, and it kind of threw us over the top number-wise. So we came to the school committee, recommended adding another classroom, so we added a 5th class right to start the school year. Staff were excellent around kind of scrambling a little bit to put classroom together and get materials together. So we would certainly do that if the numbers warranted it. But, no, last year it didn't shake out that we had to.
And for the number of students who are coming in from CHIPS or from our known students who are coming in, do we already know whether or not they are
They're included
EL?
in those numbers.
No, I mean, but do we know what needs they have, EL or special ed? Do we know any of that?
Oh,
We
sure.
do.
I don't know off the top of my head. The CHIPS program, when they're doing their transition meetings to the elementary schools, whether it's ELL or special education, they'll be convening to talk about all the individual students that are going up in service needs and things of that sort.
Okay.
So
I'm
that
just-
is known to the sending
I
school.
think Donna started asking about this a little bit. Her question was going towards this. But for instance, if you were going to have another 20 students in addition to the ones already serviced on EL at Harrington, then you have one teacher there for that. So I'm just thinking in terms of those specialized types of needs. We don't know.
Can I chime
Yeah,
in for
if you
just a
like
second? So when it comes to that, they work actually across the district as well, because there's been times that, say, the caseload is a little bit higher at Harrington than maybe not at Center. That L teacher will go to Harrington and pick up and service those students. We've had this happen in the past. So although they're assigned to a school, they are also a district person per se, because if you really did find this big peak of students somewhere, you would have to send them over. That's how we did it even at the middle school before we assigned separate people at the middle school.
Yeah, absolutely, and I understood the part about the services. I was just thinking about the teacher managing students, as I said, with all of these needs in a classroom of 20. That's all, is just taking a look at the demographics and just keeping an eye on that.
They're superstars.
I know they are superstars, you're absolutely right. I don't doubt that for 1 second, but.
Yeah, it's complicated because it depends on what the services are. 'Cause it could be
Exactly.
L and special ed
Exactly.
and something else. So it's always a moving target for scheduling our students and who's going to be servicing
Right,
them.
and then on top of that, for these, we could look at, say, 20 kids in a classroom with these needs, but it doesn't mean they're going to be in the classroom the entire time. So, these are all things that we have to take a look at, so. It was just on my mind as I looked at some of the CHIPS numbers.
Yeah.
For, especially the,
And those students have been pre-screened, like the L
Yes,
students, we've
yes.
already sent the teachers down, they're screening them as we know, so
Yes,
it's not,
absolutely.
nothing's a surprise.
No.
Even when students register for kindergarten, they'll check off if they have an IEP or if they have a different home language, and we'll start to screen them before they walk through the door, so it's not like a surprise they're here.
no,
then-
yeah, and I saw that reflected in the numbers. Like I said, I was just thinking about the teacher in the classroom, and, you have 20 kids with a high level of need, and trying to provide the best, most positive experience for them in kindergarten. That's all.
So how do you handle, because you won't know if somebody goes to a private pre-K. So even like Lions Pride, which is in one of our buildings, do you get information about what students are moving into the system?
Well, if they've
They
gone
have to
to,
register.
yeah, it depends on what's on their registration, they'll put that information down if
Okay.
they've been at other schools. If
Because I know
it's-
CHIPS gets another level because you're attached to the district, right? It's part of
Correct.
the district.
Yeah.
So all that's transmitted, but
But even like, say, Lions Pride or any of these other private
Yeah.
preschools, when they come to register, if the child had any type of
it all
needs
gets
or
done at the
accommodations were
registration.
necessary, they'd bring that information with them, so
Okay.
that we would then pass that on to the school.
all right, so you're not blindsided by that either. Then.
No, the only issue that is similar to the buses that we get blindsided on is people forgetting to register for kindergarten. So like we basically will set these rooms up for the 4, but you'd be surprised. I mean, we have some people that like the first day of school, all of a sudden realize school's starting and they come and register. So that first like week or two of the school year is a little bit crazy. I mean, we have daily registrations of students and then it's very difficult because the schools are just setting up, they're getting all their routines going and, we're adding students to them. So that is something we've been pushing to,
And CHIPS
K
it automatically
registration.
enrolls, right?
Yeah,
Well, yes,
they,
we know.
kids who are in our own programs, it's easy to kind of contact the parents and they know to do it. It's more people that may, or just move to the area, but, we're trying to push people to come and actually sign up as quickly as they can.
Okay, thank you.
But my only takeaway is I think we're in good shape right now.
Yeah.
We obviously keep monitoring it, and if it ever got to be too high, I would come back to you with a recommendation.
Great.
Next item this evening just relates to actually, Mr. Moses had talked about this previously, and we've had some offline talks as well. But the particular little neighborhood that actually feeds the McCarthy Middle School instead of the Parker Middle School, just based on our districting. So there's a little kind of a wedge of the community that actually feeds McCarthy instead of Parker School. And we talked to see if there was a way for those particular students to be able to just feed the Parker Middle School with their students. So I took a look at the feeder patterns based on the current district enrollment, and I provided this little chart for you. And I actually had read it wrong the first time, so wanted to kind of map it out just so that I was looking at all the numbers correctly. But right now at Byham School, based on our actual current fourth grade students in the classrooms, based on address, 9 are set to go to McCarthy, 97 to Parker, for a total of 106. You'll see that both Center and South Row, 100% of their kids feed McCarthy. So there's no children that actually go to Parker from those two schools. And then at Harrington School, 12 of the 105 fourth graders go to McCarthy, and then 93 go to Parker. So when you actually look at the current distribution of students based on their addresses, we have about as even as you can get. We have 191 going to going to McCarthy, and 190 to Parker. So that gives you 23, 24 average class size. Now, these numbers are before also any students may elect, but we do get a handful of kids every year that might elect to go to, say, the charter school for middle school instead of staying with us, or a parochial school, private school, something like that. So this is based on data of all of our current fourth grade students, assuming they stayed with us, which we think is kind of worst case scenario. We usually don't get a lot of kids that just come to us from middle school. So if anything, I see these numbers going down a little bit. So again, your 23, 24 is a good class size. If you took at McCarthy School the 191 students and took out the 21 students who are earmarked to go to Parker, that would leave the McCarthy numbers at 170.
Yeah.
Conversely, at Parker, if you had 190 and you added the 21, that bumps it up to 211. So you really see a disparity between the two populations. I just did the class average size for you with that one, and again, it's more pronounced. So you're looking at 21.25 at McCarthy, and then 26, well, close to 26.5 over at Parker. So as much as I would like to, for continuity and consistency of programming, kind of make that recommendation, just given these numbers, I really can't this year. I'm not saying this is something that we should abandon or we shouldn't look at in the future to see if there's a different way of looking at our distribution maps. But I was actually surprised to see how evenly we were distributed because of this, based on the 191 students. And it honestly just would not make sense to go forward with this plan and move those 21 students to Parker. It's really a whole other class if you think about it. And it would just throw the average class sizes out of skew. I don't think that's fair to the schools or to the kids. So as disappointing as it was, because I was really kind of hoping it was going to be a quicker look. When I first looked at it, I thought 12 were going to one school, 9 were going to the other, but no, I actually looked at it wrong, and all 21 were earmarked to go to McCarthy as opposed to Parker.
Someday, Joe.
Someday.
So I hope you like the information. I don't like it, but
No, it's good
appreciate
information.
it. It is good to have.
And maybe it even speaks to the reason they originally did it, maybe.
It very well may.
Because people have asked me, why is it that way? And I have no idea.
Well, now you have a report to show.
I have a report saying maybe
what-
that's
No,
why.
thank you
where
for
it
doing
was.
that.
No, but I think it's worth looking at.
Absolutely.
And we could just check it.
Oh, yeah, this is something that we can run every
at least
year.
for 2 more years.
Yeah.
Or 3 more years.
Yeah.
But-
No, this is something that we can look at every year and be able to kind of track it if we see a change or something we want to do. I'm still, aside from this, I'm still looking at the Center and South Row. Yeah, no, we are still, the Mill Road, Turnpike Road complex. So that'll be upcoming for another meeting or two. But this one, I had the data because the kids are already ours. The other issue we're having with the Mill Road, Turnpike Road is it's not fully occupied. So it's hard to kind of guess who's moving in. That's taken a little bit longer. But this one, I just wanted to clarify for you guys,
Yeah.
because I know we talked about it a little bit, and the school year's coming to an end.
One comment, what actually really solves the problem is if we can get MSBA to approve our application, then we can have a centralized middle school. Then we don't have to worry about it, but
That could be the goal.
we're working on it.
But no, again, just for information purposes, kind of answers that question for us. I just recommend staying status quo for this year.
Thank you. Thank you for doing the work.
No problem. And then last on my end is just one request for a conference, bless you. A year from now, Chelmsford High School, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, students who enrolled in Spanish classes to take a trip over April school vacation week to Costa Rica. So I'd recommend you review and approval of that request.
I make a recommendation to approve the Chelmsford High School field trip request.
Second.
Any questions? Costa Rica safe? I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah,
It's fine.
okay.
it's through,
That was the first thing I thought, I'm like, all right, is that, it's a fairly safe country, Costa
Yeah, it's
Rica?
not on the
Oh,
list.
are you thinking about the safety of the country? Oh, gee. I think we should send them to Venezuela. No, I'm only kidding.
Well, that's what, exactly, that was
I'm
my thought
definitely
exactly.
kidding.
Where in, out of South America is there some discord, so. Why is it safe?
safety.
Well, I think one
Safety
comment
first.
about this field trip is it's nice because I've seen a lot for the French language speakers, but hadn't seen it for the Spanish. Maybe I just haven't been watching it. That's
What about
great.
This year, Spanish.
Where'd they go this year?
Oh, you had to ask that
Okay.
question, huh?
There are really a lot of good opportunities for the
They just
kids.
got back.
I know there was a group that over April vacation went to,
France,
was it
Paris.
France? Yeah, England. Maybe, did they even do Ireland?
Yeah, there was one group, and like,
They were all over the place.
They go to a variety of different places.
Yeah, so there's some good opportunities
The
for the kids.
British Isles, I saw that trip.
This April?
Yes,
just
it was,
previously?
I think Mrs. Kaufman led that trip.
Okay, whatever one she was on this past April looked really good.
Yeah,
I saw a bunch
it
of
looked
the
wonderful.
pictures from it.
Greece is in 2 years, I think.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion and a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 5-0. Okay,
That's all I have.
any liaison reports?
I
No, I think
do.
we could just expect some probably changes in the boards as we go through May and June, because they're having elections.
Oh, the PTOs,
Yep.
okay.
PTOs, everybody,
I do.
Anybody? Oh, you-
CPAC, CPOM.
So I had the pleasure of going to the Economic Development Council's meeting, and they were happy to see a liaison from the school committee. They were concerned about the fact that the driveways might not be approved at town meeting. They were very happy to see that it was.
Drive-throughs?
Yes, so they're all overjoyed about that. There's another meeting coming up. One of the things that I thought was important in terms of schools is that they had this Route 129 website that they've developed to kind of sell the town. And so I wanted to make sure the schools were linked, and they are. There is a link for the schools and so on. So we are a selling force behind the economic development in Chelmsford, and I think that that's actually very important. I also attended, and we had the EL Council meeting, and the bylaws have been adopted and the organization officially formed. There will be another meeting coming up. We've set the first meeting for next year in October, and the board is starting to get formed. So that will be the next step. I have 2 meetings coming up this week for 2 PTOs, McCarthy and Harrington, so I will be going to those. And I wanted to just talk about last night's forum, if that's, I don't know if folks are interested. So I thought last night went quite well. The only thing is, I think that the timing, maybe we should look at that at the beginning of each year on when we're gonna schedule these open forums, because I think May is a tough month into June. A lot of things going on for folks, and I think there were several meetings that led to the fact a lot of people couldn't make it in person. I'm sure they'll look at the meeting itself. I thought the coordinators were impressive, the folks that we did have there. And I think that so much can come from only, great things can happen as we go forward. So it was pretty good that I saw that. The other, one thing that came out of it that I thought was really great and that we should immediately put on the front of our website, if we haven't done it yet, is that interface referral service. A lot of school districts put it right on top, front page of the district website. Here's the referral link. We're a community that participates in that. We should definitely put that link up.
Anybody else? I just wanted to mention, we've mentioned at the meeting that we did have a day on the Hill last Wednesday. We did get an opportunity to meet with some of our state reps, so Representative Golden, Representative Arcerio, and Representative Govea, and we had a good conversation, and we talked about ways that we could help Chelmsford out, both financially and through the building projects, things like that. So I think they were very receptive and listened, and hopefully we can get some good follow-up as far as that's concerned. And I said, we had a town meeting, I mentioned at the beginning, and our budget was passed, and also the capital budget, so again, I think that's great news for the district. All right, anybody have any new items or action items?
Have we looked into the substitutes yet?
Yes, next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, fine,
Yep.
great.
It was on the borderline of being tonight, so.
Okay. And then we'll do that letter for the state reps for that rally, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then.
Yeah, I'm going to talk, I just
All
had
right.
an initial talk with them today, and I'll follow up with that with you tomorrow.
And then I just had some thoughts from town meeting. It was a couple things. One is, I was wondering if our budget book could be ready for pre-town meeting, which was the Wednesday prior to the first night of town meeting.
Sure.
Okay. I know that
It was there.
there was probably a pretty good turnout there. It was probably about 50 people that
Did
went.
they actually give the materials out that evening?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, they do. And they're also available in the town hall for people to pick up if they want them prior to town meeting as well. So I didn't know if we could make those available to people.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the book itself is online if people want to see it, but we have it printed and we have them here, so, we could drop off a bunch to town hall too if they just wanted them to give out ahead of time.
Yeah,
I
there
don't
was
know if
some
people
great
can
information in
accommodate.
there, especially with the addition of that, the part at the end with the PTOs, and I think people,
Sure.
I'd like to give people time to really look at that. The other is, I'm wondering if next year it would be worth sending an email or a letter to the town meeting reps saying that these are the nights we're discussing the budget. So if you have any concerns or questions about a particular item, this would be the time to come and talk about it. So,
I'll double check with Debbie in the morning, but I do believe we send all of the town meeting reps generally an email.
okay, great.
With a link to our budget online.
Okay.
And a notice of our hearing date. I think we're
Okay.
required to do that.
Okay.
So I think they know when the budget hearing is.
Okay, great.
But I'll confirm.
All right, thank you. And then the last thing is, I really think that we should speak with the town moderator. 10 minutes is not enough time for you to present all of that information. I mean, it just isn't. It's a $61 million budget. It's a ton of work that goes into that by you and your administrative staff, and the amount of time that we spend in meetings, and to only get 10 minutes, it's just not enough time. You know, I mean, I'd be happy with 20 minutes, but to limit you to 10 minutes is not reasonable. And I really think that we should reach out to the town moderator about that.
And I agree, we didn't even get to talk about the one-on-one initiative, any of those, like,
Yeah.
the good things that we're doing with.
I
the
didn't
one-
realize that I'd gone long, because I was focused on presenting. I didn't look at the timer. And then I had to kind of fly through the last couple of slides. But,
You know, you may
I
not
don't
use
know.
the whole time, but I think you should at least
Right.
have a cushion so that you're not having to, decide what you're going to keep
Right.
and let
And the
go.
same for the
because-
town manager, too.
Exactly.
Town manager had to rush
same
his at
thing.
the end, too. and,
Yeah,
it's,
yeah, he got the minute warning.
Yeah.
And these are two big items.
Right.
That really, I think that people should hear about. And as I said, there's a lot of work that goes into this, and I think the more that we can explain that and some of the rationale behind our thinking and the decisions that we're making, the better off that we're going to be in the long run. So I don't know if maybe the chair could
Yeah,
send a
so,
letter
yep.
saying, next year we'd like a couple of extra minutes, because this is a big chunk of money, and people, this is taxpayers' money, and they
Right.
deserve to see where it's going.
okay.
More camera time, too.
Yeah, I think people are sick of me on camera.
No,
but-
I think
but no,
Donna's
that's fine.
point is correct. It minimizes the importance of it by not having enough time to really discuss it. And then people don't understand sometimes if you don't fully discuss it. And so it is important.
I'll mention it to just Paul in my passing conversations with him too, and just kind of see, where that comes from or what.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else have anything?
If I could just comment.
Yeah.
The Rotary Club's duck race is Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2, and it's fun, and it's going to be a nice day for the first time in
Yeah.
years. But it is a major fundraiser, and I think it's appropriate to mention here because of all the programs that we do in relation to the school. So hopefully if you come down and have a good time.
Where and what time?
It's down in back of, the parking lot in back of Santana Bank, and it starts at 11 and it goes till 2. And there are crafts people that are invited, and the kids like the fire department comes. I mean, there are a lot of different kinds of things to keep people busy, but the kids really enjoy, the kids particularly love to see the ducks coming down. You have to watch they don't fall in the brook, that's the.
I think there's some activities at the library prior to that,
Yeah,
too,
they do
right?
make way for ducklings, and then, they
Have a little
make cats
duckling
and
march,
stuff,
yeah.
and then they come over afterwards, so that there are.
Where's the best place for people to park if they wanted to go and be able to kind
There's
of?
a fair amount of room, right, in that same,
Oh,
that
okay.
same parking mark area, and they could park over by, where the big shopping center is and
On
just
the
walk
Amos
around the
and-
corner.
Oh,
and
okay.
Yeah.
As long as there's not a funeral, it's All Saints, they can park there too.
Okay. All right. And the weather is going to be good?
Yeah, it's supposed to be, which, I'll tell you, last year wasn't particularly good, and we did well financially, so excited about the fact that it might not rain. The brook's flowing, I'll tell you that much.
Quick race.
We cleaned it out the other day, it's just moving fast.
No, I'm winning the raffle.
Try to get a quack back.
All right, anybody else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
No.